So, we read from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, texts 8 to 12. Filling form. This is the first chapter of the last 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita in 3 sections. Karma Yoga in the first 6 verses, or 6 chapters. And then there's Bhakti Yoga in the middle 6 chapters. And then there's Jnana Yoga in the last 6 chapters. So this is the beginning of Jnana Yoga. Which is, Jnana's philosophical understanding of Bhagavad Gita. Karma is the working in knowledge with Bhagavad Gita, working with detachment. And then Bhakti is in the middle. This is the fruit of both Jnana and Karma. Although Bhakti is independent, these things can assist. Bhakti is always independent of anything else. It's the internal potency of the Lord. It's not dependent on any material cause. But, philosophical understanding helps some people to come to the conclusion of Bhakti. And those who are more inclined to work, they can gradually come to purification, detached work, and come to understand the directions of the pure devotee and take to Bhakti Yoga. And so, Bhakti is coming from our ability to engage in devotional services. We can't actually understand it from books. We can't get the adhikar or the qualification from renunciation. It's only by meeting a devotee and getting the instructions of the devotee. So Bhakti is self-motivating. It's got no material cause. So what is the cause? The cause is that the devotee has Bhakti, and therefore he can give us Bhakti. Yeah? We can't give something we don't have. We can't go to the bank and draw money out if we've got no money. Quite obvious, isn't it? So, if somebody hasn't got Bhakti, we've no chance of getting Bhakti. And so where does he get Bhakti from? He gets Bhakti from another devotee. Where does Bhakti originally come from? Vaso Vaisaha comes from Krishna, the source of all mellows and tastes. And Bhakti is just like Krishna. Bhakti Devi is completely independent to act with her own free will. Do you know that? Bhakti Devi is completely to act with her own free will. So does that mean somebody's walking down the middle of Northumberland Street and all of a sudden you get Bhakti? It doesn't work like that, does it? So there must be a cause, right? Otherwise, Bhakti could spring up anywhere. It's causeless. So it's not going to people who are not interested, it's going to people who are interested. It seems to have a cause, we have to be interested. But even then, Bhakti may not come. So it comes from personal, we get the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his devotee. Either by Kripa Shakti, by direct mercy without, having to really do anything, somehow or other, Krishna gives it, but that's very, very rare. But usually it's through, endeavour. Just like Mother Yashoda. She's the example of how we get Bhakti, or how we get Krishna's mercy, that she endeavoured, like anything, to bind Krishna for his own good. She wasn't doing it for selfish purposes. And, Krishna refused to be bound. Nobody can bind Krishna. And then when he saw that his mother was really determined that he was, then his heart melted and then he allowed himself to be bound. So she was actually using bhakti. So these middle 6 chapters we've just done are they've just passed is bhakti. Now we're starting on Jnana Yoga. And this is, there's 3 things that are mentioned. The Dhyanam Gyan, what is the known, what is the process of knowing, and who's the knower. That's basically what it's saying in the first part of the 13th chapter. So the known is the soul and the super soul. And the process of understanding that is called knowledge. And knowing the difference between the soul and the super soul. And that difference is service. So basically that's all there is. There's Krishna, there's eternal associates, and there's Krishna and service. But when we come to the material world, that service actually becomes confused with so many material services. And so Krishna has to take us through the process of, Sattva, Sadhana, Bhakti, to unravel all these different, knots. And, when you get like a Brahman thread, when it's all tied up nicely, but if you're not careful, when you try to, if you try to look at it, you get a right mess. You've got to know how to do it, and then it comes apart. But if you get it wrong, it's like it. So Krishna has to unravel all our attachments to this world. And so here it's saying that process of knowledge, the qualities that we have to develop through the association of a pure devotee while bhakti. And this is called real knowledge, and anything outside of that is called ignorance. So what's the first item? We'll read through this verse. Amanitvam madamritvam ahimsha shantir arjavam acharya parshanam shocham steram atma vinigraha indriyaseshu vairagyam ahankara evacha janna mrityu jaravyadi yuta dosha anastarshanam ashaktirana vishpandam utradara vihadishu niyatam samachitabvam istam isavatishu Maitanyena yogena bhaktya abhyavicharini vivikta desha sevitam avatir jnana samsiddhi adhyatma jnana niyatvam tattva janata darshanam etat jnanam iti praktam ajnanam yad ato nyata. What? We want to do it together. Amanitvam madam vitvam ahimsa shantir arjavam charyopasanam shocham swayam atma vinigraha indriyaseshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshana darshanam asaktirana vishvangaha putradara grihadishu niyatam chana samachitatvam istopatishu maisha anyena yogena bhaktir abhyabhachi Bhakti Avyabhicharini
Bhakti Avyabhicharini
Vikta Desha Sevitvam
Vikta Desha Sevitanam
Adya Jnana Samsiddhi
Adya Jnana Samsiddhi
Adhyatma Jnana Niyatvam
Adhyatma Jnana Nityanam
Tattva Janata Darshanam
Tattvajanatha Darshanam
Etat Jnanam Iti Praktam
Etat Jnanam Iti Proktam
Jnanam Yat Ato Yatha
Jnanam Yato Yatha
Amam Itvam
Aham
Humility
Humility
Adam Vitvam
Adam Viktam
Righteousness
Kindness
Ahimsa
Ahimsa
Non-violence
Non-violence
Shantihi
Shantihi
Tolerance
Tolerance
Arjavam
Arjavam
Simplicity
Simplicity
Acharya Upasanam
Acharya Upasanam
Approaching a bona fide spiritual master
Approaching a bona fide spiritual master
Shojam
Shojam
Cleanliness
Cleanliness
Dhairam
Dhairam
Steadfastness
Steadfastness
Atma Vinigraha
Atma Vinigraha
Self-control
Self-control
Indriyaseshu
Indriyaseshu
in the matter of senses
in the matter of senses
Vairagyam
Vairagyam
Renunciation
Renunciation
Anahankara
Anahankara
being without false egoism
Being without false egoism
Eva
Eva
certainly
Certainly
Cha
Cha
also
Also
Janma
Janma
of birth
of life
Mrityu
Mrityu
death
Death
Jara
Jara
old age
Old age
Yadi
Yadi
and disease
and disease
Kuka
Dukkha
of the distress
of the distress
Dosha
Dosha
the fault
fault
Anudarshanam
Anudarshanam
observing
Observing
Asaktihi
Asaktihi
being without attachment
Being without attachment
Anabhishpandaha
Anabhishpandaha
being without association
Being without association
Putra
Putra
our son
Son
Dara
Dara
wife
Wife
Riyadishu
Yadishu
home etc
Home etc.
Nityam
Nityam
constant
Constant
Cha
Cha
also
Also
Samachitattvam
Samachitattvam
equilibrium
Equilibrium
Ishta
Ishta
the desirable
The desire
Anishta
Anishta
and undesirable
Undesirable
Upatishu
Upatishu
having obtained
Having obtained
Mani unto me
Antony
Cha
Cha
also
Also
Ananya Yogena
Ananya Yogena
by unallowed devotional service
By analogical service
Bhakti
Bhakti
devotion
Devotion
Avyabhicharini
Avyabhicharini
without any break
Without any break
Vivikta
Vivekta
to solitary
to solitary
Desha
Desha
deserts
Desert
Sevitvam
Sevitam
aspiring
Aspiring
Aratihi
Aratihi
being without attachment
Being without attachment
Jana Samsiddhi
Janasamsubhi
to people in general
People in general
Adhyatma
Adhyatma
attaining to the self
Pertaining to the self
Jnana
Jnana
in knowledge
Knowledge
Nityatvam
Nityatvam
constancy
Constancy
Tattvajnana
Tattvajnana
of knowledge of the truth
of the knowledge of the truth
Artha
Artha
of the object
of the object
Darshanam
Darshanam
philosophy
Philosophy
Eta
Etha
all this
All
Jnanam
Jnanam
knowledge
Knowledge
Iti
Iti
thus Proktam
Proktam
declared
Declared
Ajnanam
Ajnanam
ignorance
Ignorance
Yet that which
That which
Ataha
Ataha
from this
From this
Anyatha
Anyatha
other
Other
Translation Humility, violence, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home and the rest, even minors amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. So we usually recite, repeat what we want. We've already done that twice. So I'll read so far and then we'll try and comment. Purport. This process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually this is a real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. So I'll stop there. So, what does it mean? It's seen by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. So this material world is a field, and all this body is a field which tries to enjoy its material world. And this is all people are interested in. This is all they know. It's in the mode of ignorance, one's just interested in satisfying the senses. He doesn't ask anything more than that. Just like an animal, he's interested in just eating. Most of the time animals, they're interested in just surviving, you didn't know that. Has anybody seen, sometimes you go on Facebook, okay, sometimes I go on Facebook, and say, I don't go on Facebook hardly at all, but every now and again, every time I do, I get tired of being announced. They'll say, I'll see a message on the computer, so-and-so comments on this, I know so-and-so, oh yeah. It's like, and then, there's also so many things there, and if you're not careful, you follow it, then after about 10 minutes, you think, oh, I've got to click on here for you, and then we've done that. Right? I thought we were the only one. What have we done on Facebook? We're talking about so that's just interested in the interaction of the modes of material nature. We're interested in what will satisfy the senses. And the reason I said we go on Facebook is because usually on there's always some, it's showing you the jungle where one animal's, stalking another animal. Has anybody seen that? It's really cool, isn't it? Oh, what a world. And so that's actually a result of misusing the human form of life. They're living in constant fear. We don't have any natural predators, do we? Maybe sharks, but, unless you swim in the sea, you're not going to get, chewed up by a shark or a crocodile, unless you go to Africa, and you start going near the river, then you're asking for trouble. But generally, we just went for a walk in Sunderland this morning, and there was no fear of being bitten by a shark or anything like that, or a crocodile suddenly running out of the hole, So human life's very simple, but it's not. If we actually lose this opportunity to make some spiritual progress, we could finish with so much difficulty. It's not a joke. That's why probably Krishna keeps showing me these things. So this is it. And that's ignorance. And then passion means just wanting to, we'll go to church and we'll go to the mosque or we'll go to the temple, just so that we can get some, Dharma, Artha, Moksha. Dharma means we follow religious duty. Dharma, so we can get what? Artha. Artha means, wealth in this case. And then we can enjoy karma, we can enjoy the senses. So passion's a bit more. And then the more the goodness is actually, we start to inquire about the goal of life. And so 99.9% of the Vedas are talking about material enjoyment. Then the Upanishads, they're threaded in the Vedas, like the headlines. We used to have newspapers, remember? Now what they do, they make a nuisance of themselves on your computer, don't they? You know, something will come up. And so that one where it's got, you know, like about 9 different things, and one's constantly changing just to attract your attention, and you can't get it off. Has anyone read that? It's just stuck there for like a minute, then it'll go away. And so, we're constantly being bombarded with this media. So these are like the headlines on the computer. They attract your attention, and then you start following it. So the Upanishads are like the headlines in the Vedas. You know, you read through the Vedas, and there's an important subject. It's a little different from what we've been reading. And it talks about, you know, a higher principle. Oh, that sounds interesting. And then we can start to actually make some spiritual progress. So the Upanishads are like that. They're the beginning of spiritual life. And so this particular first passage, of course, talking about, you know, interaction of the field of activities is what people call knowledge. But it's called Ajnana. It's actually ignorance. Because where does it take us? It doesn't take us anywhere. I mean, you're a doctor, aren't you? And, you know, everybody's got their own particular. But at the end of the day, if that's all we do, what's the benefit, you know? This is what it says in the Bhagavatam. It's talking, who's talking now? And there's one section of the Bhagavatam, I forgot exactly where it is. And it's each verse for like, you know, 10, 15 verses, maybe 20 verses. It talks about the material world. It says, if this is all we do, what is the benefit? It finishes with that every time in the verse. What is the benefit? No benefit. And actually, probably the opposite, harmful. So this is ignorance. Ignorance takes us in the wrong. Ignorance is always something which will take us in the wrong direction. Unless we get educated, we'll never go in the right direction. So we'll carry on. In Passion, we've got a chance. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of 24 elements, and the process of knowledge, as described here, is the means to get out of it. Of all these descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. Maicha ananyena yogina bhaktir avyavcharini. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So that's quite a heavy word, terminate. In it, terminate. It's a film called The Terminator, right? It means that that's it, everything's finished. So it means that once we actually obtain knowledge, real knowledge means we understand our relationship with Krishna. And once we understand that relationship, and Krishna relieves us from our material misidentification, we don't need, we're actually full of knowledge. The culmination of knowledge is prema, paramātha, man, pure love of God. This is actually knowledge. We don't need a university degree. We don't need anything to it. All we need is, what do we need?
Love of
Eh?
God.
Yeah, but how do you get it?
Association. Faith.
Eh?
Faith.
Faith. Yeah, that's the price. The sincere desire. Krishna sees the heart. And that's what we're trying to do in devotional service. We're trying to actually develop that desire. And that desire is already there. It's deep rooted. We're already you know, by nature, we actually, our original nature is to actually serve Krishna. But somehow or other, it's not there at the moment, it's covered. And even, at least, you know, by knowledge, we can understand that. We can understand I'm in the wrong situation. I should be doing, this is what I should be doing. Even though we may not have an inclination towards serving Krishna. I definitely didn't when I took up this process. You know, it was so many reasons, you know, to get free from suffering, to start making progress in the right direction, and the other reasons. Why did we take up this process? Why did you take it up? You just think, you know, really think about what was the essence of what sort of, you know, ping. You understand?
Yeah.
So I would think about, I'm going back to it, don't we? So what was the inspiration for it?
My parents came, so I came.
What?
My parents came to this, so then I came.
Your
That
parents?
was, yeah, that was the beginning of, like, you know, coming to ISKCON and all that. But I think going back home, back to Border, that's like, it's a nice thing. Like, you go back.
So you were like trained?
Huh?
You were like trained in the process to some degree. This is what you do. Yeah. This is what, and then, but at some point, you know, it's more than this is what I do because my parents did it. Because after some time you won't do it, you'll think, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. So there's something which actually makes us, you know, although with a bit more application and sincerity. And we may be still coming to that point. You know what I mean? We may not be completely convinced yet. And that's why we're reading Bhagavad Gita, that's why we're reading this book. What is actually knowledge? What will actually bring us to that point? You know, a lot of people come to the temple because it's like peer pressure. Or they know that, you know, they've got to keep on the right side of God. And then it'll be okay, you know. And so, you know, put something in the box and Ashirvad. And this is like a business. But at least we're doing it with Krishna. We're doing it with the right person. But we have to become serious devotees eventually. That, you know, if the penny drops, that there's nothing in this world. It's a complete waste of time. And it mentions later on that even family life's a complete waste of time. We'll talk about that later. But now we're dealing with the first quality, and it's talking about everything culminates in this quality, unalloyed pure devotional service. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 9 items are of no particular value. That's just confirming what I was saying, isn't it? "19 items, well, that's what I'm saying. But if one takes the devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.18.12, Yashasthir Bhaktir Bhagavatiya Kinchina Sarvaganais Tatra Samasate Suraha. All the good qualities of knowledge developed in one was attain the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential, even for one who takes to devotional service. It is most important. Transcendental life begins when we accept the bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of God, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. So anyway, it's given, you know, in all prefaces, that's like a preface to the main purport. In the in the beginning part, it tells you about it overviews what it's going to say in the rest of the preface, right? Have you noticed that with some literature? In Bible time, it'll say in a few lines what the whole chapter is about, then it'll just expand on it a little bit. Then you go into the word, you'll go into the verse by verse detailed explanation. So we've just gone through the overview of what's going to be said in the rest of this purport. Devotional service is the goal, and we obtain it by taking shelter of someone who has devotional service and can teach us the process. Does that mean so we have to have fire sacrifice? Swaha, Swaha. Yeah, do we have to sacrifice to do that? What do you think? Yeah.
We're doing Sankirtan yet.
Sankirtan, do we? Do we have to go out and walk? So we have to go out and walk?
Yeah. Higher.
You hear that? You've all got to go out on boats and hurry on, otherwise you've no chance. Okay? So that's the stress stuff. But anyway, the original question was, do we need to have a fire sacrifice? And take it, get us beads, so we're going to follow the 4 eggs and 16 arms. And otherwise, no chance. Yeah? What do you think? What do you think?
That's what Prabhupada said. You chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 regulated principles.
And Bob's your uncle, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not like that. Prabhupada, in 1923, he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he says that he was so impressed that he accepted him at that time as a very saintly person. He was impressed by him. He wanted to actually see again and hear from him. He already accepted him as a spiritual authority. And then 10 years later, or something like that, he actually took initiation by fire sacrifice. So, we're making progress while we're hearing and we're applying. If we're hearing seriously and applying, we're making progress. Otherwise, it's just that, it doesn't make sense. But, the emphasis is to come to the point where we're serious. We're not just, whimsical about devotional service. If you're whimsical, you get a whimsical result, won't you? If you're like, you're serious sometimes and you're not serious. And it's like taking medicine sometimes and not taking it another time. The disease will just carry on. So when we become serious about taking the medicine, then we promise to take it ongoing. And this is what fire sacrifice and the vows mean. That now we become serious about the study of and the process of devotional service. So we'll actually, we're determined and we'll go forward quickly. We won't be, going forward and going back, going forward and back, and going sideways, and so many things. So initiation is actually, we may be actually serious, but we're just not confident about taking initiation from any particular person at that time. And that will come. So we can still make our announcement. That's the point. So as for the knowledge outlined here, the item may be analysed as follows. Is it up there?
It's actually.
Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honoured by others. The material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honour from others, but from the viewpoint or the point of view of a man in perfect knowledge, who knows that he is not his body, anything honour or you shouldn't say anything, any honour or dishonour pertaining to his body or this body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently sometimes it's found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles, and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items. This is the items followed. So the first day is talking about humility. Where does humility come from?
Chanting Hare Krishna.
Huh?
It's by chanting.
Surrendering. By surrendering yourself.
Yeah, surrendering is a sign of humility. It's like this, we have to have humility to actually approach and hear from others. We admit that I don't know everything, so let me hear. So this is the beginning of spiritual life. And it's called, and it's a little bit of faith, so let me hear. Ado Shraddha, Shraddha means faith. Ado means in the beginning. In the beginning, Ado Shraddha, the sadhu sangha, then we hear in the association of devotees. And so that humility is required. It's absolutely necessary in the beginning, because most people, they won't do that. Or if you ask them to speak to them, they don't accept it. So what is this humility? It comes from the word humus. I mentioned this before, I think, right? Yeah. So humus is a Latin for soil. And so you plant seeds in fertile soil and water it, and you get the fruit of the plant and then the fruit. So if we plant our seed of bhakti in this humility, or humus, then we water it by hearing and chanting, then it'll start to grow. So if we plant a seed of bhakti on barren land, there's no humility, then it wastes it. Even if you hear and chant, actually if you hear and chant, there's a possibility, but the attitude has to change by association of devotees. And Amanitvam, and then Adambitvam means pridelessness. So this is what the same door for this particular verse is speaking about. People, even they come to a spiritual movement out of false ego, not thinking, as it said here, that we're actually practicing a religion with a material concept. We're thinking we're not thinking on the platform of Lord Chaitanya. He was actually explaining how we should, understand devotional service, what our position is. But we're acting as if, I'm an Indian, I'm an English, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm educated, I'm uneducated. All these things are actually false designations. And so when we come to devotional service, if we have some material qualification, it might make us, a proud devotee. And even if we haven't got, a material qualification, there's a saying that a beggar is proud of his penny. That pride's still there. Whatever we think we've got, we'll be proud of. And so this is all mental compulsion. Because, sooner or later that will alter. Sooner or later we'll realise that we've got nothing. You know that? Sooner or later we'll realise that actually I've got nothing. We'll talk about that a bit later. Yes, so we become we become a big religious leader, we don't even know we're not the body. Or even if we take the devotional service, we get proud of the position that we've got, and we miss the whole point. We think we're actually in control. We think we're actually making people into a devotee. We think we are doing so much service, but it's all coming from Krishna. Krishna's given us a benediction to do all these things. And if we're too proud, he'll let us carry on that way. You know, we won't learn, we have to learn the hard way. But if we're humble, then, you know, by a few knocks, you know, a few obstacles in the way, we can appreciate, oh, wait a minute, I'm not in charge. And then we can alter the mentality. And that's what the material world is designed for, all the way through, whether we're in devotional service, or whether we're out there just trying to actually enjoy the material world. It's called a school of hard knocks, the material world. You know, at some point we'll realise I'm not in charge. And then we have a chance to become humble. The material energy humbles us. I usually don't get that diverted so much. I was once on the computer and it said, do you recognise these people? The pop-up came. I thought, what people? Click. And it was all the famous film stars from the past. You know, there was, and you know, in my mind I was still seeing them like that, because before I joined the movement like 40 odd years ago, you know, in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, you know, they were all like big people at that time, very famous, very qualified, and it showed them then and now, and they were unrecognisable. You know, all the qualifications have been taken away. And so that the material energy is bringing it. So why don't we just become humble by knowledge? We're talking about knowledge means humility, and humility means we can accept knowledge. So if we just hear, we're meant to become humble because we realise the reality of our situation. Yeah, just by hearing. Okay, and then we won't become proud of being a good book distributor, a good singer, a good cook. What else is there? A good vagina. Blow the contra 5 minutes. Sounds something. Any questions on that? Humility and pridelessness. Okay, next point. Non-violence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body. But actually non-violence means not to put others into distress. The people in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains. So unless one elevates people to the spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people, so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entitlement that is non-violent. Okay? So we should all carry a book with us. Yeah? A little book. You know, what's a little book? Name a little book. Larger Vidya, the King of Knowledge. Another one.
The path of perfection.
Path of perfection.
Chanting
Chanting Vihati. Coming back.
Without separation.
And easy journey to other planets. We should all carry 1 or 2 books, you know. Usually we carry a little bag with us or something, or we've got a pocket big enough to put. And when we meet people, we'll be surprised opportunity comes to actually distribute a book. Well, we're trying Krishna next year maintenance. And then instead of just, leaving a person in ignorance, we don't really help them just by our association. We can actually give them up. We can start talking, invariably, the conversation will open up the way we can actually speak about it with spiritual knowledge. You're talking about the last budget that they put prices up again. They've changed the new law, the criminals are getting away with murder. Or there's some talking point, there's always a complaint, have you noticed? And from that complaint, it usually leads on to there's a higher principle behind it. Before you can explain that, start talking about karma, that these things are predestined according to our activities. And then people's interest becomes perked. And then you get the book out. You can read further if you want. And then we actually help that person to get out of ignorance. This is what we're here for. Okay, so see Chaitanya Vallabha, he's got all the books. Okay. A book a day helps you work, rest and play. Next one is tolerance. What is tolerance? Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonour from others. If one is engaged in the advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonour from others. This is expected because material nature is so constituted. Even a boy like Prahlad, who was only 5 years old, was engaged in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, was endangered when his father became antagonistic to his devotion. The father tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlad tolerated him. So there may be many impediments to making advancement in spiritual knowledge. We should be tolerant and continue our progress with determination. If we don't tolerate, we won't make any progress. Or it'll be very difficult. Because it's the first instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. In previous verses it gives information, but this is the first thing Krishna tells Arjuna. Because Arjuna, he's like beside himself with anxiety. He's even crying because he's having to fight against his close relatives. And he just doesn't know what to do, he's completely bewildered. Thank you. And so, what do we do? What do we do instead of tolerate? Any examples? If we can't tolerate, what do we usually do?
We yell at people.
Eh?
We yell at people. Yelling.
Yes?
We fight against them.
Yeah, we become angry, don't we?
Yeah.
What's another thing we do?
Leave the place. Leave the place.
Yeah, we get the off on. We become morose. But what does it do us? I mean, if we're not really, if you want to be morose, that's okay, but it don't really affect others, does it? If you want to become angry, you might affect others, but it doesn't really help the situation. Afterwards, after the anger's gone, you realise that it was completely unnecessary. And what benefit do you get? You might think, well, I shouldn't be angry again. If you're actually a little bit thoughtful, you think, well, maybe I shouldn't get angry. But most people don't even think that, they carry on being angry. So, but if we tolerate, what happens? What happens when we tolerate?
We may not spoil the things or the issue.
Eh?
It may not spoil the issue, or the situation will be under control.
Yeah, we don't add any more fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
And we're able to actually give ourselves time to analyse the situation. And then if we actually, reading Bhagavad Gita, we'll realise that, this particular situation is a chance to learn tolerance, and from what this person's saying, to analyse whether it's actually correct. And then we can get some benefit. Definitely, if we tolerate, tolerance is the actual beginning of learning something from the situation. We tolerate. And also, what else do we get from tolerating? What else can happen when we tolerate?
Krishna's mercy.
Eh?
Mercy.
Bhakti.
Mercy.
Mercy. From Krishna, you mean? Yeah. Yeah, Krishna. Well, how does that mercy come?
Because you leave everything to Krishna. So somebody is unkind to me and I'm ignoring that. So I'm leaving that decision, what needs to be done with that person. I'm not taking that decision, I'm leaving it to God.
Yeah, but we might be like, I'm not angry at him. And you really are, you know what I mean? But that won't last, will it? So that has to be a realisation. We have to understand the philosophy. Yeah, you're right. We have to understand what's actually happening. And so that's the highest standard. First thing is to tolerate, because you're supposed to tolerate, you're not supposed to react. But that's not going to last. Eventually we'll crack. But if we tolerate with knowledge that, what's actually happening in this situation, and then we advance, we become more in control of the senses. And Krishna's pleased with us, it takes us to the next step. Another thing is, when we tolerate, it diffuses the situation, doesn't it? If somebody's really angry at you and you don't do anything, they can't be angry anymore, there's nothing to be angry at. It's like, they just give up. And then what they do, they think, oh wait a minute, maybe I'm in the wrong. That's what happened with Nityananda, isn't it? Jack Madai, he threw a pot and he hit Nityananda on the head, and he cut his head. There was blood coming, and Nityananda just actually, he didn't retaliate. He just prayed for him. And when Jagai saw that, he completely changed his heart. He thought, this is a great soul. And he paid his obeisances. And it happens like that. A devotee can actually change people's heart just by not reacting. It happens. Especially when you're on the Sankirtan. Sometimes people, they go out to bed the wrong side. They're angry as soon as they come on the street. And you're the first person they see, and you get it. But then sometimes, if you don't react, they'll come back and apologise. There'll be time to think about it. So toleration is a really good quality. Okay. If you've got anything you want to add while we're going through, this is not a one-way dialogue. You can actually give me some feedback. Yeah? Simplicity means that without diplomacy, one should be so straightforward that he can disclose the real truth, even to an enemy. So that's just all it's about. So actually, simplicity is such an important what is it? What does it mean, simplicity? What's another, how would you explain simplicity?
Straightforward.
Eh?
Straightforward.
Straightforward, yeah. And to be a devotee, we have to be straightforward. We have to see things as they are, not be, we're not. It said diplomacy, not be, not duplicity, or cheat ourselves. We know what we should do, but we don't do it. And I was reading one verse in the Dayānanda, and it was talking about. It didn't mention diet, it was talking about the regulative principles, but it actually didn't speak on the way we usually do, but it mentioned them in, what can you say, in a different way, what do they call it when something...
Paraphrase.
It paraphrased them, and then it paraphrased a fifth principle, and it was this one, simplicity. It says that unless we're simple, we cannot make progress. And, so if we're straightforward and see things as they are and deal with it, then we make progress. And Prabhupada, in that purport, he was actually really stressing it. He says, unless we're actually simple and straightforward, we cannot make progress in devotional service. We just fool ourselves. Out of false ego. Simplicity means we realise that we actually accept we're insignificant. That's a difficult thing to accept. I mean, in the material world, if you're insignificant, you might as well commit suicide. You know what I mean? Because to be successful in the material world, you have to be significant. I know one devotee, I got in one of Prabhupada's, I forget where it was, but it was talking about this devotee who wrote home to his parents, and he was writing to his mother, and reassuring everything were okay, and then at the end of the letter it says, your servant, Michael or something like that, and when his mother read that, she burst out into tears. Oh, I've spent so much money on him for his education. Just to become a servant. But it was simple, it was actually accepting his position. That's why we said Prabhu, isn't it? We're saying that just to remind us that we're actually insignificant, we're everybody's servant. And that's what pleases Krishna. And that's what Lord Chaitanya said as well. Our real identity, we're not a Vaishya, we're not a Kshatriya, we're not a Shudra, we're not a Brahman, we're not, what else is there, we're not a sannyasi, we're not a Vanaprastha, we're not a Grihastha, we're not a Brahmachari. He said, we're Gopi Bhatu Kamalaya Das and Das. We're a servant of the master of the Gopis. 3 times removed. So simplicity, yeah. So as for the acceptance of the spiritual master, that is essential. Because without the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual science. One should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, if he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advance without the disciples following the regulative principles. Or the regulative principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. Wow. That's a big one, isn't it? So what is that? What would you say that's saying to us? What's the main point that's being made in this? If we serve the spiritual master and he's pleased with us, we'll make advancement even though we may not be following the regulative principles.
most important aspect of devotional service is to please the spiritual master, even above the rules and regulations. If we please the spiritual master, that's all success is there.
Yeah. And the thing is that we're, he's a representative of Krishna. And, spiritual master is getting guidance. That stage, Prabhupada was empowered by Krishna to do what he did. And Prabhupada realised that, and that's why he was so empowered. He didn't take credit, he wasn't bewildered by it. He realised that through his mercy of his spiritual master, there was also a representative of Krishna. So it's that same thing, simplicity. We accept the position of being a simple servant. And that's what Krishna wants. He accepts, he's a simple servant of his devotee. You can imagine he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the master of all creation. We can't even measure this universe hardly. And it's like one mustard seed in a barrel of mustard seeds. And that's just like a quarter of the whole creation. This is a very poor example. We can't estimate, it's just beyond our imagination to know how powerful Krishna is. But what's his main thing, what he wants to do? He wants to serve his devotee. And so, we have to develop that mentality. And that's the whole point. Whatever we're doing, if we develop that mentality, then we're going to be successful. If we don't develop that, then it'll be very difficult. We'll have to keep going through difficulties until we do accept it, or we realise it. Tom and Krishna were all like that, weren't they? Prabhupada probably heard the story where he was a temple commander in Vasandri's temple. And he hadn't been in the movement long. He took that post on of a lot of devotees who had been much in a long time compared to him. But he was such an expert manager, and Prabhupada recognised he was becoming proud. And so he started talking about what I was just talking about, that in the whole creation, this Newcastle is a quarter of the other the three quarters are all spiritual. It's just a quarter. And out of all the universe in this creation, we're like one mustard seed, this particular universe. And in this universe, there's only one Earth planet, and it's insignificant. There are millions of planets. And on this planet, there's 7 continents. One of them is actually North America, and there's one, in North America there's the USA. In the USA there's one city called Los Angeles, and in that city there's just one Hare Krishna temple, and in that Hare Krishna temple there's one temple commander, and he thinks he's so significant. Okay, we can stop there anyway. This is a big subject, the spiritual master. But it's time, it's 7:15. So, we'll open up for any feedback or questions. Okay? And then after that we'll have a short kirtan. And then we'll take a short.
I was just reflecting on that bit where he was saying that one devotee, he'd signed his letter, your servant, and the mother, burst into tears because she said, oh, after all that education, you're just a servant. So I heard something similar as well, that one father of a devotee, he was, he saw some mail that his son had received. It said HG, so-and-so das, And then he said, oh, what is this HG? And he said, oh, it means His Grace. And he said, oh, he tapped him on the back. Well done, son. Well done, son. Oh, His Grace, And then he said, what's above His Grace, And he said, oh, His Holiness. And he said, know. And then sometime later, he took sannyas, you know. And then it was HH. And he was, slapped him on the back, well done, son. And then one day, another time, then he'd become a spiritual master, and that was still the time when we would still refer to other gurus as His Divine Grace. So then it said HDG. And then he said, oh, what is this? He said, His Divine Grace. He said, is there anything above that? He said, no, that's the highest. He said, well done, son. I knew you had it in you. But yeah, it's funny that in spiritual life, the highest thing is to be the servant. And not only to be the servant, but to be the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. Ad infinitum. So, but like you say in the material world, because it's a perverted reflection, the highest thing is to be the boss. And if you're the servant, then you're a failure. But in spiritual life, if you think you're the boss, then you're a failure.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting paradox. Yeah, anyway, when I remember that when you shared.
Yeah, why is it? How is it that, somebody who is so elevated feels so insignificant? How? It seems a paradox, doesn't it? You've got so much ability, or it appears that you've got so much ability and you're doing so much service, and yet you feel insignificant. How can you be like that? How can you feel like that? How could Prabhupada feel like that? I once saw a snippet where they were in, I think it was Detroit, and they had like a buffet and they invited us to perform guests. And, the camera went by and it showed you Prabhupada, it looked like, it looked like the host of the whole thing, it looked like, he looked so humble in that association, you know what I mean? Even though he was the most elevated person there. It comes from knowledge. This is what it's saying, it's saying you, Amanitvam. If we actually have knowledge, then we become humble. Because we realise what Krishna Maharaj realised. And we realise our real nature. That we're just there's so many billions and trillions of living entities just in this room. We can't see them, and we're one of them. And somehow or other, we've got the good fortune to be in this human form of life. So that's how insignificant we are. And yet, and Krishna being so merciful to us, giving us a process of devotional service, giving us the association of devotees. And when we appreciate that, because, devotional service, it's all a matter about appreciating what we have, being grateful for what we've got. And we can only be grateful if we really appreciate what Krishna's given us. Otherwise, we feel ungrateful, don't we? We think we should be getting something or we should be getting that. And then the consciousness changes. And we become uninspired. It's like that. If we're always thinking, wow, I've got so much, it just enlightens us, doesn't it? It's like Christmas every day. you probably won't get that one, yeah. In England, Christmas is the biggest festival, and it's a festival of receiving gifts. So as a child, you're always looking forward to Christmas,
Yeah.
You're always getting that benediction of gifts. So a devotee who's always, in the mood of being grateful, it's like he's getting Krishna's mercy every day. And he can see that. And therefore he becomes very, very solid in devotional service. He becomes convinced that Krishna is his well-wisher and becomes more dependent on Krishna. Who would like to become dependent on Krishna? One and a half. gradual process. We may not be so independent. We may, you know, we're like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You know what I'm saying? I've already, you know, this consciousness I've got now, I'm okay, you know, I'm satisfied with that. I don't want to surrender everything all of a sudden, you know. When I agree with her, he was my proud father of the disciples. And maybe I'll tell you next time this one.
You can tell it if you like.
Okay, I'll tell you. I agree with it. You were actually, at the end of his life, he got cancer. And you were laid flat on his back, he couldn't even lift his head, you know, he was so weak. And one senior, you know, sannyasi went to see him, and they were talking as much as he could. He said, Maharaj, he says it's Krishna God. And before he could answer, you know, we were thinking what to say. He said, yes, he must be God. He says that otherwise all the scriptures, all the acharyas, all the spiritual masters, they're all liars. So, you know, he got that faith. That's a difficult thing to have at that time as well. You know, you're going to leave this world, everything that you're attached by anything to the things you've actually cultivated. But you have to actually let go. You have to be confident that Krishna will actually deliver you. The final test. And so these other difficulties we experience on the way, they're actually training us up for that. You know, surrendering a little bit more to Krishna, depending on Krishna a little bit more. And this is how it grows. And eventually it becomes more natural. Okay, I've surrendered some. Let me do it a little bit more. And we become more and more, you know, fixed in his consciousness. Okay, Kantaraj, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Ki
Jai.
Prabhupada, Ki
Jai.
Gaura Premanandi.
Haribol. His Holiness Dayānanda Swāmi Ki Jai.